Hey, all you wiretappers. Gary Jenkins here, retired Kansas City police detective and the intelligence unit, turned podcaster and author and documentary filmmaker. If you want to see any of my stuff, go to my website and look in the show notes or look in I think the donate page. Of course, if you're in the donate page, you might want to hit the donate button. We always use a little support. And I have a guy that I'd heard of and I'd seen on YouTube, and we have mutual friends, but I had never actually met him. And some people he knows asked me to be on their show. And so I was on their show, and Bill was on that show at the same time. So we started talking. We had lunch, and we had all these. We were running in the same circles, but separate circles that then overlapped every once in a while. He was on one side of the law, and I was on the other. So Bill Corum, welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. And we were running we were running real close, but I was careful. When I got out of prison, when I got out of prison in 1964, I had two goals: never go back and never get caught. And I started breaking the law the day I got out of prison, and I broke the law for almost 19 years and didn't get caught. I got caught a couple times in little things, and I hired a high-powered criminal attorney that came out of Alex Peoples' office, who's now a judge. I won't even mention his name. He's now a judge. I think I told you who it was. But Alex got me out of a couple deals way back when, but little things. And I was still doing everything. And I went for almost 19 years and didn't get caught. Unlike many of my friends, I've been in prison ministry for 40 years now. And I run around with a lot of guys that did a lot of time. 25 years, 40 years. They had double life without parole. Now they're out. But I never got caught. And I was speaking in a women's prison just recently, and I was talking to the women, and I was telling that story. I said, I got out and I went for 19 years. She said, you must have been awful smart. I said, well, I wasn't too smart, or I wouldn't have been doing that stuff, but I did know ways. And one thing was because I didn't talk to people. I didn't have a lot of, kind of like the trench coat robbers. They robbed banks for 15 years and never got caught because they didn't email, text, phone calls, none of that.
Yeah, they moved away too. Moved away from their home territory, so they weren't having their buddies come up to them and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Where you been? I've seen you for a while." And then they turned around and tell some cop that they know, "Hey, I can't remember the guy's name
Billy
now.
Kirkpatrick.
Billy Kirkpatrick. He's been out of town. He just got back." And you know, then they get this notice about these bank robbers somewhere else. He didn't do that. He stayed out of town. So Bill,
go ahead.
Let's go back and start you from the beginning. Introduce to who you are to my guys, because they don't know you. I didn't know you because you were such a low profile in this world. You said you got out of prison. Why don't we start with that? What were you in the joint for originally?
I was originally in there for DIRE Act, which is in the feds. That's Interstate Transportation of Stolen Motor Vehicles. I was in the Marine Corps. I went AWOL. I got caught. I went back. I got back to AWOL again. I went back. They put me on restrictions, said I couldn't leave the base. I was at that point in my life where nobody could tell me what to do. And so I'm leaving the base, and I left. And I think I stole 10, 12 cars while I was out. And then I got when I got back the next time, they put me in the brig. And I escaped from the brig. And I stole a car off the base back in the 60s, early 60s, 62, 3. People left their keys in their car.
Yeah.
And I went out. I was in a parachute locker painting. When the guard came in to check on me, I hit him in the back of the head with a full bucket of paint, a full gallon of paint. And I went out the window and I got a car. And I actually had a guy with me. He said, I'm going with you. And so we got in the car, and when we got to the gate, I said, now, if that guard steps out at the gate, I'm running over him. And he's, no, don't do it. I said, just shut up. I'm running over him. And I got to the gate, and the guard stepped out and saluted me. And I'm like, what in the world? I drove into town, run out of gas, Gary. Got out and stole, I don't know how I remember this, I stole a 62 maroon Bonneville. And when I was walking away from the car, my buddy looked back and started laughing. I said, what are you laughing about? He said, I see why they saluted us. That car had a Colonel sticker on the bumper. So then I stole that car, that Bonneville, drove into Mississippi, because I always ask guys in prisons, how many of you know when you escape from prison, you need some different clothes? Yeah. So I drove into a little town called Leland, Mississippi, and I was breaking in a clothing store to get me some clothes. It was 11 o'clock at night, and I looked down. I was climbing up on some boxes to get to the roof to go in the skylight, because they had analog alarms. They were easy to beat. And I looked down and I saw a flashlight coming down the alley. So I dropped down, ran the other way, and I turned the corner and ran into the biggest, fattest Mississippi sheriff you ever seen. And he had a gun. He had a gun about this long, and he stuck it right here. And he goes, "Where you going, boy?" And I said, "With you, sir." That's what I said. And that was the end of the Marine Corps. So now I've taken a car across the state line, and the feds step in. And I got a 6-year sentence. I got what they call a zip 6. And back then, before 86, now in 86, they passed it to 85%.
Yeah.
But prior to 86, you could get out of the feds at 1/3 of your sentence. And so I got this 6-year sentence. I got out in 2 years. And when I got out, I said, I'm never getting caught again. I'm never going back to prison. And I went and I just started right then. And everything from then on was like, I got involved with pornography. I was promoting pornography and prostitution. There's a story in my book about me I was a bodyguard and a chauffeur for a lady that had a cat house over in Independence. You know where Inglewood was in Independence?
And guys,
you know where
Independence is a suburb of Kansas City, but it's like whole decently large city for a suburb, but it's connected to it. That's where Harry Truman was from and retired back to.
Yeah.
So you were over there probably on the east side of Independence. Inglewood's kind of closer to Kansas City, over there by Dog Patch and what we call Dog Patch, a totally lawless area.
And so there was a guy there that I was friends with that had a record store. He was the first guy in Kansas. His name was Tony Marino. He's in my book. He's dead now. He was the first guy ever in Kansas City to sell paraphernalia in a record store. And he was making $25,000 a month back in when it started. That was a lot of money. And right next to him was a store. It's still there. I go by it all the time because we eat at the Inglewood Cafe all the time. It's the only one on that little first strip there that's got steps going up. And a lady up there had a cat house for 12 years, prostitutes. And her main customers were executives from Ford Motor Company, from General Motors, and from Hallmark Cards. And the reason, Gary, was because she knew if she had executives, they weren't going to talk.
Yeah.
And she had beautiful women. She didn't have ladies like up on Main and Truce and Prospect.
Yeah.
These women had all their teeth, and they were good looking.
Yeah.
And so the first time, actually, who got me the job was Salarello. He owned that Deluxe Deli down on 430, where the Erotic City is now.
Oh,
he
owned that bar. I forgot about him, yeah.
And I told him for years, I said, you need to open an adult bookstore here because, Gary, he was the only bar in Kansas City, that was open on Election Day. You know why? Because he was in the county.
He was in the county, he wasn't in the city.
He wasn't in the city. And he was open on Election Day. And I told him, I said, man, if you'd open an adult bookstore, you could make a lot of money. We never did, of course.
Yeah.
And then they put Erotic City in there, and it went good for a few years and stuff. Yeah. But so he's the one that told me about her. I went to interview with her, and she said, I just have one question. Do you carry a gun? I said, no, ma'am. I carry 2 guns. And she said, you're hired. And so, Gary, I picked her up every day on the plaza. She lived in a $2,000 a month apartment on the plaza in 1976. That was a lot of money.
That's $5 today.
Yeah. And I took her to get her facial every Tuesday. I took her to the beauty shop every Thursday, and read about her in my book. She was 80 years old. The name of that chapter in my book is 80-Year-Old Hooker. She was 80 years old, and she ran it like a business. She opened at 9 o'clock in the morning and closed at 5 o'clock at night, and ran it just 5 days a week, just like a business. And I wouldn't be surprised she didn't pay taxes. She was legit, man. And I knew you can't operate something like that for 12 years in Independence, Missouri, and not have the police know about it.
No, they knew about it. Upper echelon, they just steered people away from it. Don't worry about that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So Bill, you moved from that into the drug business. Now, how'd you even get started in that? We're like 1960s, by the late 60s, drugs are starting to become more popular, and there becomes a real market for it that's among a much larger constituency than ever before. So now, how did you move into that?
I really, for years and years, Gary, years, I didn't have a partner because I knew if I had to run, I didn't want somebody, I didn't know if my partner would tell on me. So I did everything by myself. I did one thing one time and I had to have a partner, and I stole a computer out of a crane at General Motors down in Leeds. And my fence, the chapter in my book that killed my fence, that was Sol Landi.
Yeah.
And when Saul got killed, like they killed my fence, because anything I took to Saul, he'd buy. It didn't matter if it was guns or it didn't matter what it was. And I didn't never keep anything except cash. If I had money, I'd keep it, but I'd never keep anything. I didn't keep diamond rings, or I got rid of all that stuff because I never wanted anything to be able to identify me and tie me to a crime. And Saul, when he got killed, of course, then I started dealing with another guy. But Saul was taking all that and selling it to Junior Bradley, most of it, the stuff that Junior would be interested in.
And
but
Junior Bradley, I explained who Junior Bradley was. Junior Bradley was the mob fence in Kansas City. He was probably the biggest fence in Kansas City. I got a feeling. And what he started doing was trading Dilaudid, especially, for stolen property. And he had a little deli right across from police headquarters and City Hall. And everybody knew Junior. Everybody loved Junior. Everybody liked Junior. He's always doing favors for people. If you went in the penitentiary, you'd go talk to Junior and say, okay, what's going to happen when I get here? Can you help me out? And he'll say, I'll make some calls. Or we overheard him on a wiretap once saying a father called him and said, my son's got a report up here to Leavenworth to the camp. He said, okay, I'll take care of it. I'll be somebody there to meet him there. And I've had many other reports, but Junior was the main mob fence. So go ahead and talk what you were dealing with Junior Bradley.
Yeah, but let's back up. You asked me about how I got into drugs. So all those years when I was married, I didn't drink and I didn't do drugs. I thought if you did dope, I thought that's why they call it dope, because you were dope if you did it.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it, and I didn't drink because I knew I had to always be able to think and make decisions. And because I cheated on my wife every day for 10 years, and I did crime every day for 10 years, and she never knew it till I wrote this book. And I gave her the first book, actually. And so when I got divorced and started smoking pot and doing stuff, hanging out with those people, and I started smoking weed. Then the first time I bought an ounce of weed, it was $40. And I'm like, okay, how much is more? If you buy more, you can buy a half pound for this, or you can buy. So I said, then give me a half a pound and I'm going to sell. So I started buying pounds and selling ounces, and man, all of a sudden I'm smoking free and I'm making some money. And then I started selling. And by the time I ended, even when I was selling cocaine, I was selling 100 pounds of pot a week. I had one guy that would buy 100 pounds of pot from me every week. And I'd just take him 100 pounds and he'd bring every day he'd stop by my house with sacks of money. And that was the way I got started in the drug world, and everything. It was from pot, it was meth. We called it crank back then, not meth. And then I never did get real addicted to crank, but I got real addicted to cocaine. And of course, I was doing a drug class the other day. I teach a drug class, my wife and I, addictions class at our church. And I said, when I started, I was only going to sell it and not do it. And because one guy said, I was only going to do it and never sell it. And I said, no, not me. I was going to sell it and never do it. But that didn't last very long. And once you start doing it, you're in there. And
yeah, really.
And then when I got arrested September 5th of 82, the guy that I beat up, I put 100 stitches in the back of his head with a ball bat. And it was in an act of enforcement, really. But he turned states. He's the one, you remember Kenny Weld?
I remember the name.
Was you still on the force when Kenny got busted in 83?
Yeah, I would have been.
Okay,
I have some vague memory. I don't remember all the details.
At the time, it was the biggest drug bust. It was the biggest drug bust in Kansas City. Maybe they caught him out there in Blue Springs with 29 pounds of cocaine. And we were selling cocaine to the people that were selling cocaine to Kenny. And so the guy that I beat up gave a 20-page, which is like reading a book, 20 typewritten pages, 20 typewritten pages. And he named every name involved in the circle that he knew. And that implicated us as being some of the leading cocaine dealers in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Now, when I go speak in churches and a pastor gets up and says, folks, today we've got the biggest cocaine dealer that ever lived, I get up and say, you know what? I don't mean to correct your pastor, but I was implicated as being one of the leading cocaine. I was not the leading cocaine dealer. There was a lot of people bigger than me. But that's how it all started. And of course, my case, I never did. The drugs never came in. The lawyers that I had, because when I got busted, it was on a Sunday. And that's part of my story. I always ask inmates, how many of you have been arrested on a weekend? And every hand goes up.
Yeah.
And I say, and then I say, what happens when you get arrested on a weekend? They all yell, nothing, because you're not going anywhere till Monday morning at the very least. I got arrested at 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon. By that time, Gary, I had 3 goals. When I was about 30, I got nicknamed by one of the key mafia figures, Crazy Bill, because I did some crazy things. Like I ran through a bar, you know where the old Club Royal was on Main?
Oh, yeah.
There was a bar right
there many times.
Okay, there was a bar across the street that I had a girlfriend working in, and we got in a fight, and I was going to cut the bar in half with a chainsaw. And I had my buddy drop me at the back parking lot. I fired the chainsaw up. I opened the door, and when I stepped inside, the door closed with the closer, and the bar was totally dark. It was not a bar where you could even buy a bag of potato chips. It was strictly alcohol. And when you get in a bar like that, they're dark. And that door shut, and I thought, I'm going to bend over and start cutting this bar, and somebody's going to shoot me in the back. So I just walked through the bar with the chainsaw running and went out the front door, and Kenny picked me up in the front, and off we went. And so because of that, I got nicknamed Crazy Bill.
Yeah.
By 30 years old, I had 3 goals: money, power, and influence. Now, I told you we were selling a lot of cocaine. So I stayed in $500 a night hotels. I ride in limousines. I bought $20,000 worth of cocaine for a one-night party. So I had money. And I had enough power to make a phone call, have somebody killed. So I had power. And I had enough influence. And when I got arrested Sunday afternoon, now I love telling this to a police officer. I was on a show in Texas with a cop, and we called it The Con and the Cop. But I love telling this story. I got arrested September 5th, 2 p.m. is when they booked us into the jail. And I made a phone call back to Kansas City to somebody that was in politics. And I said, you know who to call. And that person called the judge we were selling cocaine to. And I asked this question in prisons: how many of you know when you're selling cocaine to a judge, he don't want you in jail? And I walked out of that jail, Gary, at 1:30 Monday morning. I got arrested less than 12 hours after I got arrested on a weekend. And when I walked out of that jail, I said, Bill Corum, you've arrived. You got money, you got power, and you got influence. But the one thing I didn't have was peace. I didn't have any peace, man. No peace. If I was in a restaurant eating and a cop walked in, I'd put money on the table and go out the door. If I saw a UPS driver, I got nervous because he had a uniform on. I didn't have any peace. And then after I became a Christian, I was reading in the Bible one day, and it said a wicked man runs when no one's chasing him. And I went, oh my gosh, I left a lot of steak dinner sitting on the table.
And when anybody chasing you?
Nobody. That cop didn't even know I was in there. He probably didn't even know who I was.
Really?
He just came in there to eat, but I thought he was after me.
So, Bill, I always like to go into the nuts and bolts of some of these things, and we kind of left one thing hanging, is the Sol Landi story. Now, guys, Sol Landi was a big sports bettor, and Sol Landi had a metal...
Square deal junkyard.
He had a junkyard. He bought a lot of scrap metal and dealt in scrap metal, but he also would buy most anything from thieves, from boosters and burglars and people like that. That's where Bill met him. But he's a huge sports gambler, and they thought he might testify against our boss, Nick Civella, because he had been allowed to bet down at the trap, down with Frankie Tusa, who was the underling to handle all the sports gambling for Nick Civella. Isn't that right? And that's the way that went down?
Oh, yeah, and Bobby Maroon was running the trap at the time.
And so do you remember the guy that paid for his murder? Remember that guy, Johnny Francavilla?
That's what they said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
what they said.
He had some
but
gas
stations. But Johnny Franks got the order from somebody else.
Yeah. The buck stopped with Johnny Franks now, didn't it?
Yes.
Because he hired another guy who then he hired a black guy, which is really unusual, who then hired a couple of young black street kids, and that was even more unusual, and they killed this Sol Landi and his wife.
And
So
then they sang,
keep it.
and then they sang like the Temptations.
Exactly. Yeah. Then some claim that Johnny Franks did that just on his own, trying to impress Nick Civella. Some people say that somebody else told him to do it. I don't. He never talked, so it never came out. Did you ever hear anything about that?
I never heard anything except what you just said, that he never talked, and Nick never got convicted. He never.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, that what you said, the guys that they hired to do it, because back in those days, as I'd go to the lecture chair before I'd tell on somebody.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell on anybody. Go ahead and put me in the gas chamber. I'm not telling on nobody. But those guys they'd sing like the Temptations. They weren't going to. They would, if they offered them a day in jail, they wouldn't take it. If you'll tell us, we're only going to put you in jail for a week. If you'll tell.
Yeah.
So
how did that work with you and Sol Landi? You weren't a sports bettor. You didn't have anything to do with that. You were a thief.
Yeah, and I don't know. I honestly, you know what, Gary? I don't remember who even told me to go to Sol with stolen merchandise, because I was hitting a lot of construction jobs back then. I worked construction, and I was in the union, and I was stealing off these jobs all the time, big amounts of stuff. Like they'd start a brand new job, and they'd have all brand new tools, and I'd go over there and take everything they had, and then I'd take it all to Sol. And matter of fact, one time I did a job it was an 8-story high rise over in Kansas City, Kansas, down around in the Argentine area. And I was on the job. I was working on the job, and we just started, and we had all this whole trailer load of tools. And I went over and got all the tools. And the last thing I took out was a cutting torch. I cut the lock off the door because I had a key to get in. And so when I got to work the next morning, I had everything in my truck. I had a tonneau cover over my truck and had all these tools in the back of my truck and parked in the parking lot. I got there and I called Johnny Myers, who was running the job, and Johnny's been dead for years. I said, "Hey, Johnny, somebody hit our job last night." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, they cut the lock off. They got everything." And he said, "Call the police and I'll be out there in just a few minutes." And so the cops come, a couple detectives, and he was telling them what was going on. I'm standing there listening to the whole thing. And there was a generator, a big generator. And I was real strong back then, Gary. I was 6'3" and weighed 275. And I carried this generator down the steps and Johnny said, or the cop said, "How much that generator weigh?" And he told him, and he said, "It had to be at least 2 guys, if not 3, but no one guy could carry that down them steps." And Johnny turned around and he said, "Except Superman," because that's what they call me on the job. And they laughed, and he laughed, and I laughed. Yeah. And then that night after I got off work, I took it all down to Square Deal and sold it all to Sol.
Yeah, interesting.
So,
all right.
And I did that stuff all. Yeah, I did that stuff all the time, but I honestly do not remember who introduced me to Sol Landi.
Yeah.
But I know that for years and years we were buddies. And when I first met him, I had an alias that I always went by. I had two aliases. One of them was a guy I was in prison with that was from East St. Louis, and I knew everything about him because we were real good friends. I knew his middle name, I knew his mom and dad's name, I knew everything about him. So I'd use his name. So if anybody ever asked me a question, I knew. The other guy was a cousin of mine that I hadn't seen for years. I used his name because I knew everything about him. So when I first met my wife, we went to a dance one night. We weren't married yet, and we were walking up the steps, and this guy walking out said, "Hey, Jim, how you doing, Jim?" And I said, "Good." We got in, sat down. My wife looked at me and she said, "I thought your name was Bill." I said, "It is Bill." I said, "He probably just had me mixed up with somebody else." There was a lot of people in the inner circles.
Yeah.
So when I met Sol Landi, something inside of me told me because I met Sol and I told him my name was Jim Gardner. Mm-hmm. And we did a couple deals, and then something inside of me told me to be honest with Sol. And so I sat him down one day and I said, "I'm going to tell you something. I use that name as an alias. My real name is Bill Corum." And I was so glad I did, because later I would be in the River Quay in a restaurant or a bar with Sol, and some of the guys were in there. And I thought, if he'd introduced me as Jim Gardner, and then later they find out who I am, I might not be here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So they might think you're undercover cop or
exactly. So
informant or something. Yeah.
And that, I think that's in my book. I told that story because I felt like being upfront with him, and because I trusted him.
Yeah.
I actually, in the book, I think I said, if Nick Civella trusted him, I thought I could trust him.
Yeah.
But apparently,
Maybe he didn't trust him that much.
Yeah, because right there out there on Pennsylvania, or let's see, where they lived right off 75th, right behind what was that restaurant on 75th?
The Italian place.
Yeah.
That starts with a G, I think. Yeah, I know. Just north of Ward Parkway Shopping Center. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know the
yeah.
neighborhood. Yeah.
Oh, was it Cat? No, it doesn't matter. But he lived right down that street. He lived on Washington, right there, about 77th or 8th in Washington. So
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but that's how I met Sol.
Yeah, and guys, what those guys did that night, they tried to make it look like a home invasion robbery, but ended up killing him and I think they raped his wife too.
They didn't kill her. They left her alive.
They left her alive, but they really tried to make it look like a home invasion robbery, not a hit, which was, at least they were that smart. They just could keep their mouth shut, and they weren't smart enough to not tell their friends, so they got caught.
That's good thing there wasn't no Facebook back then, Gary.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy world you live in. So
these kids, yeah.
What happened? What happened? You had all this going. You had money, power, influence. You caught a cocaine case, and I'm thinking about that cocaine case. That you said, I thought you said Wells. It's Kenny Weld, isn't it? The race car driver.
W-E-L-D.
Kenny Weld. He was a race car driver at that time, kind of well known, and he had a whole he had a big company that sold wheels, fancy wheels. He was really doing well, and then he got involved with a huge, big cocaine thing. I didn't remember you were part of that, but I remember that.
Multi-million-dollar wheel business.
Yeah.
I still am I was a dirt track guy. I grew up on dirt. I love dirt. I actually took his brother, Greg, who actually owned the company. I took Greg to the first race that Greg ever raced in. I drove him to the races. And then Kenny and I and Greg, and they won the Knoxville Nationals. Greg raced in the Indianapolis 500 4 times.
Yeah.
They were a big name in the country, the Welds, and making millions of dollars, Gary. Even back then, they were making millions of dollars. And then Kenny got caught up in the cocaine and started messing with it. And next thing you know, he's making a lot of money in the cocaine too. But he got caught with 29 pounds, which was a large amount. But that statement that guy made on me, because I always felt guilty because Kenny got busted, because the statement that he made, he named Kenny Weld in that statement. And it wasn't long after that they arrested Kenny, but I'm sure they were already watching him for sure. But then I don't know, Kenny got 8 years, Kenny got 25 years. He went to Sandstone first up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And he only did 52 months. So I'm not sure, because back then a third would have been eight and a half years or something, right?
Yeah.
And he only did 52 months. So I don't know how that, maybe it was money or whatever. I don't know. But he turned his life around in prison. But then what's the sad deal? When I turned my life around, I tried to get in touch with Kenny Weld, and he wouldn't talk to me. He was I think he was afraid that I was going to come after him, because the guy I beat up was the guy that we were all involved in the cocaine world together. Joker John. I don't know if you knew who Joker John
I don't remember that. I don't remember that name now.
They had a bar out on 23rd Street.
No, I don't.
Joker John, his last name was Agrusa. He had a brother named Nick Agrusa.
Nick Agrusa's brother. Yeah, I do kind of remember that. He went down with that whole thing. See, I was 83. I was off into something else during those years. That was early in the crack cocaine thing.
No, John, after I beat up Pink Mike, John Agrusa left town. He moved to Arizona because he was scared of me. A lot of people, because I was crazy. I did some crazy things, and people were scared. And so when I got arrested on that deal, he left town. He went to Arizona. And then Kenny got busted, Kenny Weld. And some of the people in that, my dad read that 20-page statement. My dad said, and my dad was an old guy. He was born in 1909. But he read that statement and he said, this guy's life ain't worth a nickel, is it? And I said, no, because the guy that wrote the statement. Then I got arrested. You knew Jim Smart was a judge?
Yeah, I remember the name.
Okay, Jim, back then, Jim was a lawyer and then later became a appellate court judge.
Yeah.
And he's retired now, but a real good friend of mine. So when that happened, my case ended in May of '84. started September 5th of 82 and ended in May of 84. And in June of 85, 13 months later, I got sued by the guy I beat up. Me and the other couple guys. One of the guys that was with me is dead, Charlie Elmer. I don't know if you ever heard that name, but he was a cocaine dealer. But anyway, I was just going to forget about it. And I showed that to my dad, that the notice that I need to appear in court.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad's, no, not the statement, when he sued me. Then they filed charges.
Yeah.
And I showed it to my dad one day, and I wasn't even going to go. I said, "Oh, God will take care of it." And my dad read it, and he said, "Bill, you got to get a lawyer.
Yeah.
You're being charged." And so I went and got a lawyer, and I got Jim Smart. And Jim tried to go and do a deposition on that guy on Pink Mike. Could never find him. And I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know I didn't have nothing to do with, but nobody's ever been able to find him. But I'm suspecting, because my dad said when he read that 20 page, he said his life isn't worth a nickel, because he named a judge in there. He named Kenny Weld in there. He named a lot of other big name guys, and he's disappeared. So nobody knows. I haven't seen him since the day in court in 1982. So who knows where he's at? If he's around, I don't know. But
interesting. What did you finally cop? Did you have a full trial, or did you go ahead and cop a plea in the end?
That's interesting you'd ask, because when we got out of jail at 1:30 Monday morning, the 6th of September, the lawyer came and walked us out we had left, we were staying in the Embassy Suites downtown. You know where that was at?
Oh yeah.
It was $500 a night. And we had left two briefcases there, with one had cocaine in it, uncut, and the other one had about $60,000 in it. And so we went down. We actually called, he's dead now, so I can tell you who it was, Jerry Shanzer, that owned Napoleon Bakery. And Jerry was a big, I'm surprised that you talk about bookmakers. Jerry was a big bookmaker.
Yeah.
And Shanzer owned Mother's down on 18th in Baltimore. Not Mother's, Granny's.
Granny's, yeah.
He owned Granny's at 18th in Baltimore.
Yeah, a lot of mob guys used to go down there and eat.
Oh, every time I went in there, I saw somebody.
Yeah.
And then later, he opened up one over in Mission Shopping Center there on Mission Road. And then they ended up opening up Napoleon, him and his brother Larry. And then they're both dead now. But this is how much we trusted Jerry. We told Jerry, we called Jerry from the jail and said, go down to the embassy and get a briefcase. And Jerry went down, and he drove halfway to Warrensburg, and something told him to open it. And he opened the one. He opened the one that had the cocaine in it.
Oh shit!
And he called us and said, "I got the wrong briefcase." And no, he said, "I can't come and get you with this." And so he went back to the embassy and got the right one. Came down, and we made bond that night. Then the next morning was okay. We got busted on Sunday the 5th. Monday we got out. The lawyer said, "Mike, I don't know if you ever knew Mike, and what was his dad's name? It was Fitzgerald and Fitzgerald was the name of the firm down in Warrensburg."
Warrensburg, yeah, I don't know them.
Yeah, and Mike and Charlie Fitzgerald. So, because I called Peebles' office and said, "Hey, this happened," and they said, "Stick with those guys. Those guys are the best in the county. They know the county. They know the prosecutor, the judges, and everything. Stick with them." So we went in. He told us, "Don't come in tomorrow morning," because it was 1:30 in the morning, Monday morning. He said, "Come and see me Wednesday."
Yeah.
And so we went. No, he said, "Come and see me Tuesday," because that was 1:30 in the morning. And we walked in there that morning, and he said, "Come and see me tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, and bring me $10,000 apiece." And I wish I had a video of it, because it can be on America's Funniest Home Videos. I walked into his office with a white bank bag and dumped out $30,000 on his desk in cash. And he opened his drawer like this and scooped it in the drawer. And I said, "Mike, there's a lot more where that came from." He said, "Bill, I can't, I got to do everything legitimately."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay." So the first meeting, his dad was in there and he was in there, and the three of us. And he said, "Guys, Dad and I've talked, and you guys might want to think about getting separate attorneys. And I said, for what? He said, because if one of you take a plea.
Yeah.
I almost jumped over the desk. I said, there'll be no plea. There will be no plea. We're not guilty. We're not going to admit we're guilty. They can send us to the electric chair. We didn't do it. Now, Gary, they took us out of the house at 2:00 on Sunday afternoon in broad daylight. First, we sent the guy out the back. He was totally naked when we got there. He was laying in bed. He'd been doing Dilaudids and Quaaludes all night. And he was blood from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet. His whole back was red. We walked him out the door totally naked in front of the whole world and told him, go out there and tell him there's nobody else in the house. We were so jacked up. And here's the thing, I have to tell you this. All those years that I got away with stuff is because I was smart. And now I'm snowblind. There was a song years ago by Styx called Snowblind, and it's about cocaine. And I'd been up for 86 hours when we went down to Holden. I had not closed my eyes for 86 hours. So I wasn't in my right mind. Anyway, so when we said no plea bargains, there'll be no plea bargains. And for 7 months, no, I'm sorry, for 4 months, that was October, November, December, January, February, March, April, no, 7 months. For 7 months, we went to court multiple times. The whole police department, I don't know if I guess we'll say it because it's done, it's history. But I had 2 grocery sacks, the old brown grocery sacks on the couch that I'd inventoried. I had $62,000 in cash. I had, because it was in envelopes, and there were $10,000. I was throwing them in there. 62,000 in cash, about 4 pounds of pot, 3-gallon Ziploc bags full of precious jewels, emeralds, rubies, and stuff like that. Some hash, a 12-gauge shotgun. I think that was all. Maybe it, whatever. When the first time we ever went to court, and my partner had the one that's dead, Charlie. He had a leather Gucci bag that we always had with us, and it had 4 or 5 grams of cocaine in it. He took his diamond rings off, put them in there. His watch, he had a Rolex watch he put in there, and about $3,000 in cash. That was in the car. That was never mentioned in court. No guns were ever mentioned in court. No guns were ever mentioned in court. I had a brand new model 59 9mm. That was never mentioned in court. That 12-gauge shotgun was never mentioned in court. They said that they found a couple of envelopes of cash, and they found a gram. Now I think there was about probably maybe 8 grams or no more than that. It was ounces, 4 or 5 ounces of cocaine. They said they found 1 gram of approximately 1 gram of a substance believed to be cocaine.
Yeah.
And my lawyer said, and they said they'd send it to Jeff City for analysis. And my lawyer said, and what were the analysis of that? They said they haven't come back yet. This is 2 months after they arrested us. They did, and they found approximately 1 gram, and there was ounces of cocaine in there. They found a couple envelopes with approximately $2,000 in cash. There was 62. The car I was driving. So when I got arrested, I had the keys in my pocket. So when they booked us into jail, when we walked out at 1:30 Monday morning, they gave us back our property. I had the keys in my pocket. So the cars, now this is a brand new 80, this was 82, this was an 81 Trans Am. The car's in Holden. The police chief, and they said they were going to confiscate the car because it had Kansas tags on it, that they wanted to go through the car. The police chief changed the ignition and was driving that car for his personal car. It cost my buddy, because it was a friend of mine, Ron McGee, it was his car. It cost him $10,000 and an attorney to get his car back from them. So bottom line, every time we went to court, several times, my lawyer would say, I'd like to call Officer Gary Jenkins up. Gary Jenkins is not on the force anymore. He moved to Arizona. I'd like to call so-and-so up. Next time we go in, he's not here anymore. He moved to wherever. So all the money and all the guns and all the drugs, they split it up, and nobody. So the thing was so dirty. So what happens is we'd been going to court for that 7 months. And then I become a Christian. I walk into his office and we're adamant. We're not plea bargain. We don't want separate lawyers. We want you two guys to represent us. We're going to beat this thing. And I told, because when that guy gave that 20-page statement after he got out of the hospital, this was a month later or something, he called us all in. We went in. He hands each one of us 20-page statement. He said, guys, let me tell you something. I'm defending you on an assault with intent to kill charge. I'm going to get that reduced. But if you get busted dealing cocaine, you've got to stop dealing cocaine. Because if you get busted dealing cocaine while I'm on this case, it's going to complicate the case. Yeah. You got to stop. And I said, Mike, I don't tell you how to practice law, and you don't tell me how to make money. You just keep doing what you do, and I'll keep doing what I do, and I'll keep bringing you money. And he never said another word. 3 or 4 months later, I become a Christian. I walk into his office by myself. And when I walked in the door, he said, what happened to you? If you look at that book on the picture of on the back of my book, that was 4 months before I became a Christian. And the Bible says the eyes are the windows of the soul. I had a very dark soul. I had very dark soul. Yeah. And so he goes, what happened to you? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you don't look the same. And I said, I'm not the same. And I told him what happened. And he said, and I said, we've got a problem. And he goes, what's our problem, Bill? I said, I can't lie anymore. He said, you're right. We've got a problem because we've been lying for 7 months. He knew the story. He said, I just need to know this. I'll defend you guys. I'll beat this case, but I need to know. So we told, and at this point now, 7 months later, he said, there's no way out of this thing. You guys are going to prison. He said, I can help you figure out a way to get to the good prison, but you're going to prison. So when I go in that day, and he goes, what's wrong? What happened? And I told him, and he said, you don't look the same. I said, I'm not the same. I said, we got a problem. He goes, what? I said, we can't lie. I can't lie anymore. And he said, got an idea. And I said, what? He said, if I enter a plea bargain, I think we can do this. And he said, you guys won't go to prison. And he said, talk to Mike and Charlie and see what they say. So I called them. We went down, met with him. And this time they looked at me and said, what do you think we should do, Bill? I said, I think we ought to take the plea bargain. We got 5 years probation and 5. Now the crazy
thing was on the assault. That was on the assault. But you still got a cocaine case out here pending with the feds.
No. That 20-page statement that implicated me was he never got it out of his office. It never went out of Fitzgerald's office. So he didn't tell it to, he told it to whoever he told it to, but to the police, and the police were all crooks anyway. So I don't know who he told. I just know that our lawyer said if this cocaine thing comes up, it's going to complicate our case. It never came up. And so maybe it was the mercy of God. I don't know. Because it was a 20-page typewritten statement naming judges, Kenny Weld, all these guys, and all these people started falling after that. And so anyway, we ended up getting a $5,000 fine and 5-year probation. Now, the crazy thing, if you read my book, Charlie and Mike both they got called and they went and reported. I never got a call. 13 months later, I had a nephew getting married up in Wisconsin, and I wanted to go to that wedding, and I knew I couldn't leave without permission, but I didn't have anybody to ask permission for him. And when that guy sued me, Gary, when that guy sued me and I went and got the lawyer that I told you I went and got, I said, by the way, he said, I want to take this case. I said, great. I said, by the way, I got arrested September 5th of 82. The case ended in May. I was placed on 5-year probation, a $5,000 fine. I've never heard from anybody. What do you think I should do? He said, Bill, you need to write a letter. And I put the letter in the book. I wrote a letter and said, I'd like to be supervised. Please contact me. 13 months. And within 2 days, they were knocking on my front door. And that's when I started reporting. And Kay King was my first probation officer. And she asked me all the whole story. And I sat with her for 2 hours and told her the whole story. She asked me how many drugs I did, what I did. I said, I've done everything there is, from marijuana to heroin I've done it all. And I did massive amounts of everything. And I was drinking 2 quarts of whiskey at the end every day. And people like like, you can't drink 2 quarts of whiskey. I said, you never did cocaine, did you? Because when you're doing cocaine, you can't get drunk. And so anyway, and I asked her when I left her office, I said, so does my probation start now or does it start back then? She said, no, Bill, it starts today.
Oh, really?
Wow. I said, for 13 months, I've been going to churches and schools and telling people how bad drugs are and how bad alcohol is and how bad this is. And I said, I've not had a traffic ticket. I haven't had a traffic ticket. The only ticket I've gotten in the last 43 years, I had a bad car wreck where I got T-boned at 70 miles an hour. I pulled out in front of a guy. It was my fault. Mm-hmm. And that's the only ticket I've had in 43 years. I haven't been stopped by the police. And she said, I'm sorry, Bill, it starts today. Guess what? I did the whole 5 year. I went from then, I got off in 89 or something. It was almost 5 years I did. My partners, they only did a year and a half and they let them off. And they were still dealing cocaine. They were still dealing. Matter of fact, one of them's brother, his mama died, and the funeral was at Pasatino Brothers over there on the avenue. And I went to the funeral and I was sorry. And we were hugging and me and him sat down and we're talking. And he had a little leather Gucci bag. And he said, hey, now listen, he said, I'm going in the bathroom. You want to go with me? I said, no, brother. And I got up and left. He wanted to go do some cocaine. Yeah. And that was years after he'd been, anyway. Yeah. But I'm glad I had to do the whole 5 years because I got to speak in she called me once and said, I got a friend that teaches a criminal justice class at a college. And they've had detectives and they've had police officers, they've had lawyers, they've had parole officers, but they've never had a criminal. Would you come and speak? And I said, I'd be glad to. And then I called the professor and I said, I've been asked to come. And he said, yeah, we're looking forward. And I said, I have to tell you one thing. I cannot come in there and speak and not tell your class that my life was radically changed April 15th, 1983, when I came into a encounter with God through his son, Jesus Christ. He said, that's okay. And I went and told him. So I was glad I got to stay on parole for 5 years.
So Bill, what are you doing now? I know you've got a prison ministry. Do you speak at prisons? And
that's all I do, Gary. 40 years.
How does one get into that? Do you have an agent that booked you into different prisons, or how does that work?
No, I started going in 1986 with a guy named Bill Glass, who was an NFL player, played for the Cleveland Browns. He was an All-Pro. Actually he retired from football in 1968, so that's how old he was. Started the ministry in 72 and was the biggest prison ministry in the nation. He had 30,000 volunteers. And I started going in as just a volunteer. And then he asked me to be a platform speaker. And I was a platform speaker for him for 30 years and I've been in over 500 different prisons in my life. And I do prisons almost every day, a prisoner in jail almost every day. We're getting ready to this will be our 17th car show up at Crossroads in Cameron. And this will be the biggest car show ever in a U.S. prison in history. Last year was the biggest. We had 80 cars last year, but this year we're planning
on car show. What do you mean? Like guys bring their classic cars up and
drive them in on the prison yard, and the inmates get to come out, walk around, and look at them. And last year we had 80 cars and bikes. This year we're going to have 250 motorcycles and cars, and we're going to feed 2,000 people. We're going to have 2,000 meals that day for the inmates and the staff, all the staff. So that's what I've been doing for all these years, and we'll keep doing it as long as I can. Wow. But as far as I was going to ask you about Joey Rags, I knew Joe Ragusa. You ever deal with that guy?
Not directly. I followed him a lot, and we almost caught him doing a hit one time, and then they saw us and they boogied on out. But I know one story about him. He needed to go. I heard this later. He needed to go to a meeting down to City Market with the other mob guys, because he was right next to Charlie Mortina, and he went on several hits with these guys during the Spiro Civella War. So he's out at the plumbing place where he was working. So where
was he at? Was he at St. John Plumbing?
I don't remember the name of it. It's over there by Jackson, 9th and Jackson, or Truman and Jackson, somewhere over there on the east side. I can't remember the name of it now. And so he told this guy, he said, I need to go down to the market. He said, can you give me a ride down there? And the guy said, you got your car here? I said, no, you give me a ride. So he gets in and lays down the back seat. So the guy takes him down there, and then he gets out. So he was a real deal.
Boy, that old market was something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That old city market. Oh man. Yeah,
Every mob
they
got
had a
down
pretty
there.
big. Hey, what about? I was going to ask you about a couple of guys that were big heroin kingpins. Sam Haley and Aaron Gant. Was you involved when they were really big in Kansas City?
Yeah, I was a young policeman, 72, 73, 74, and Aaron Gant and Sam Haley were like the big ducks, and they had this war going between the two little heroin organizations. And he was in with some guys, and Aaron Gant called him Junebug. He was in with there was a whole family, the Denmans. He was in with these guys, and so they. And Sam Haley I never did understand the difference, but they had two different organizations and they hated each other, is my understanding.
Oh, they did, yeah. How about Ramses? Did you know who the Ramses were? The Ramsey
Oh, shit.
brothers?
I remember that name. I know that name. One of those crime families that stole
They were
in the neighborhood, and
they were killers, all of them.
Yeah.
I think there was 8 boys, and at one time 7 or 8 of them were in Missouri for murder. And I was in Potosi, and Roy Rambo Ramsey, they called him. And he's the one that they remember when what they call them that you put on the roof of your car?
Landau top.
Yeah, that wasn't the word I'm looking for though. Whatever it was, you could have them tops put on. Yeah. They got one put on in a upholstery shop over on Prospect. Oh. And when they called and said your car's ready, they went up there and killed everybody in the shop and took their car and left. And then they went out to Belton or Grandview, and there was an old couple that had a bunch of old coins and stuff, and they knew one of the brothers, and I think it was Roy, and they went out there and knocked on the door, and of course they let them in. They told their girlfriend to stay in the car, and they went in and they shot her. They were 65 and 66 years old. The little lady was 65 and the old man was, they shot each one of them 3 times, and just for a few dollars worth of coins, man. They were murderers. They were killers. But I was up in Potosi, and Roy asked me, he said, would you go see my dad? And he said he's in a nursing home. And Gary, his father, was a hardworking man, had never committed a crime in his life. And he was in this nursing home. And I went and saw him and prayed for him and stuff. But he had these 8 sons that were murderers. They were killers. And the old man was in a nursing home dying. And Roy asked me if I'd go see him. So I went and saw him and prayed for him. But yeah, they were something else, them guys.
You mentioned Sam Haley. Here's in your area, there's a guy named Michael Catu, who used to be a fire captain, was a big time cocaine dealer. During those years, he got into cocaine. He and his brother Joe Maggio, and they had a cocaine deal going, and he got back out. He had a body shop over on Independence Avenue, and 2 black guys came in and executed him, basically. Left the employee there. There wasn't anything to steal, and executed him. And the drawings, one of them, there was a lot of speculation. It looked like Sam Haley. So I think he
might have been.
I think he was supplying black dealers with cocaine, I believe. I saw him meeting with some guys once that I didn't know who they were, but they all looked like black cocaine dealers.
They were killers, all them guys, Haley and those guys. I asked you about...
Yeah, have any idea? Here's a question. I just got an inquiry from one of Gant's relatives. They were wanting to know more about Aaron Gant getting killed. See, he got out of the joint. He went to Missouri State Penitentiary. I think it was for drugs.
Yeah.
And he went to a club that night, and somebody walked in, shot him, and walked out right away. Another black dude. So this relative was asking me if I knew any more about it. I didn't know any more about it. You remember that deal at all?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I was thinking that Aaron Gant and Sam Haley had been dead for years, but
this was years ago. This was quite a while ago.
Yeah, I thought he might have died in prison or something, because I knew they both had a lot of time. They did a lot of time in Missouri.
Yeah, they did. But they were kingpins. Their names are really well known. Feared names on the east side in Kansas City. Really feared names.
Absolutely. Did you ever go around Vic Fontana's place when he opened up Fanny's?
Oh, yeah. I went in and out of several. He had several different places. Had Fanny's. He had the one down on the Southwest Traffic Way a little bit after your time, I think. God, I forgot the name of it. But yeah, all the mob guys went into his joints. He was mob friendly.
I met him when he had the one up on Main next to Mother's.
Oh,
he had that place. Yeah. What was Walter Mitty? Walter Mitty's. Yeah, that's where I met Vic. And then I actually plumbed that Fanny's when he opened up Fanny's. Yeah, me and Saladino plumbed that Fanny's.
Yeah, it's a kind of upscale place. They had a special VIP section, and
yeah,
anybody went to Fanny's at one time.
My cocaine partner was really in there a lot, and Kenny supplied a lot of the cocaine to them people in Fanny's. So I was supplying a guy that's passed now. He's actually the only guy in my book. We made a little movie of my life, 1993, and Tony was the only guy. There was 178 actors in the movie, and Tony's the only one that actually played his own part. And Tony just died a few months ago. But Tony Marino, and he's the one that had that record shop next to the whorehouse. Over there in Englewood, Tony Marino.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tony supplied Amigos down in the West Side, over, where Amigos was over there.
Yeah.
And I gave Tony all the cocaine, and he gave all the cocaine to all those guys over there.
Out there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
what are you doing today? You guys selling this book, The Ultimate Pardon, guys, and I'll have a link to the book if you want to buy the book in my show notes.
Yeah, it's just BillCorum.com is how you find it.
Yeah.
BillCorum.com.
Okay.
Yeah, BillCorum.com.
Yeah.
But I put it in prisons free. We've put 110,000 of them in all 50 states and over 3,000 prisons and jails.
Yeah.
And then I wrote 2 other books during COVID because they wouldn't let me in a prison during COVID, Gary. And I was like, am I going to have to go commit a crime to go to prison? I want to go to prison.
Because I've been going souls, man.
Yeah, I've been going in since 86 and now it's 2020 and they won't let me in. I'm like, this is not right. We made 2 other books. One's called Diamonds from the Rough and the other one's called Nuggets of Gold by 12 ex-cons. It's like a little daily devotional, little short 112-page book, little short book. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing. And right now we're also, all inmates now, I don't know if you knew this, but all inmates have tablets, electronic tablets.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. All 2 million inmates have a tablet.
Really? Wow.
And they can email their families can email them, send them pictures. I don't know how it works. Don't ask me how it works. Don't ask me how electricity works. I just know if you flip a switch, the lights come on. But these tablets, they can't get on the internet. They can't Google and get on pornography or nothing like that.
Yeah.
But they're able to communicate with their families through this tablet. There's apps on those tablets, just like your phone has a Google app. It has a weather app. There's an app called Edovo, E-D-O-V-O. And Edovo right now is on 1,200,000 tablets. And by the end of the year, they think they'll be on all 2 million. We're putting our content on those tablets.
Oh, okay.
So everything on YouTube, on Instagram, everything I put on the internet, because I don't put anything on there except about God. I don't put any politic stuff on. I want to sometimes because I'd like to rebut people, but I just am not going to do that. I'm not going to get involved in those arguments.
Yeah.
I go in prisons and an inmate wants to argue with me about religion because there's 50 religions in there. I can name them, but I'm not going. A lot of different religions, and they want to argue. And I go, I'll argue with you, but before we start, can I tell you one thing? A man with an experience is not at the mercy of a man with an argument. And see, I had an experience April 15th, 1983.
Yeah.
And they want to argue about different things. And you're going to get back on drugs. I said, let me tell you the difference between abstinence and deliverance. Abstinence is saying, I haven't had a drink in 12 years, 4 months, 3 days, 7 hours, and 12 minutes. That's abstinence. Deliverance is saying, I don't drink anymore. I got set free. April 15th, I haven't done a drug. I haven't done an illegal drug. I've done drugs because I had back surgery, neck surgery, car wrecks, but I haven't done an illegal drug since April 15th of 83. I've not smoked a cigarette, and I was smoking 3 packs of non-filtered Camels a day. I've not had 1 drop of alcohol, and I've not kissed another woman. And I used to kiss a different woman every day when I'd leave Debbie for weeks at a time and come back and would be gone for weeks. My kids would call her, come over and say, where's dad? And she'd say, I haven't seen your dad in weeks. I don't know where your dad's at. And I've not kissed another woman since 83. We've been married 46 years. I have had an experience with God that changed my life.
Yeah.
And so I'll argue all you want to argue, but you're wasting your time because you're not going to change my mind.
So you got a YouTube channel, probably just search for Bill Corum on that. But
Prison Power, Bill Corum. And the Instagram, Bill Corum. I don't know the call letters or how you get
No,
into it.
you can figure it out. No,
Yeah,
all you need to know is
yeah.
Bill Corum in prison. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, if you put Bill Corum in there, you're going to find all
Yeah,
kinds of stuff
yeah.
on Google and all that.
We got a lot of content out there, which is
Yeah.
that's the name of the game. Get that content out there. That's what we're doing here, getting content out there.
Yeah, Gary, I'm 82 years old, and when I was 80 years old, I wanted to do something my whole life and never got to do it. And I've got a son that's an attorney who's he's been with the same firm for 30 years. He's never lost a trial or an arbitration in 30 years. I've got a son that's an oncologist, one of the best cancer doctors in the country. And my two boys took me to do something on my 80th birthday that I've wanted to do for long. I wanted to drive a tank. And they took.
How do you drive a tank?
They took. Next time me and you have lunch, I'll show you videos. I got to drive 5 tanks. I got to shoot 13 different machine guns, including the minigun. Minigun.
Oh my God. Those things are wicked.
It was up in Kasota, Minnesota. Yep. When I was shooting that minigun, I was praying, Lord, don't ever let a bad guy get a hold of one of these. Oh my goodness. That thing is, oh goodness.
I know. It's amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So that was a pretty fun thing. And yeah, I've enjoyed it. So God's good to me, man.
All right. Bill Corum, the ultimate pardon. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Bill.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a pleasure. God bless.